How's it going? Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, to Deadpool VR. Today we are going to take a look at a new VR game called Deadpool VR, and as you might have guessed it, yes, you do get to play as Deadpool in this Deadpool game. Can you believe that?
I'm touching myself tonight.
Now, if you remember back in the day, I think it was like 10 years ago now at this point, we did actually get a very good Deadpool video game, and I think that was the best. We were also getting great Wolverine games back then as well. The best one at that time kind of released around the same time period, where you just mowed through everything and it was brutal as hell. And of course now they are working on a new Wolverine game and trying to make it mature, but what made the original Deadpool game so good was simply the fact that it didn't hold back, okay? It knew the point of Deadpool was to be grotesque and, over the top, just insane and very, very childish, but with this kind of sickly, twisted humor. And 10 years ago, the world wasn't so insane. Everyone wasn't so easily triggered or sensitive about any subject matter. You could make a joke and it would land simply because people would have the intelligence enough to understand it was a joke. And the whole point of Deadpool is this kind of grotesque nature, and the comedy, his twisted dark comedy, reflects that. But as you can imagine, like with most things in this wonderful consumer society that we live in today, things became more and more corporate over time. And the movies, some people like them, some people, like myself, think they're kind of just okay. I like the first movie, but after that, I'm kind of checked out. That's enough Deadpool for me. But since then, corporate humor has kind of taken over, where everything is almost like a reference, and a safe, reference at that.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next product.
So a lot of it has kind of become Marvel slop, and I've never been a big Marvel fan. I'm just gonna put that out there. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy it, okay? I'm just not a massive Marvel fan myself. I'll take the original Spider-Man movies and, the original X-Men, and I'm okay. Call me an unk, call me a boomer, but yeah, I'm not a big Marvel fan. And to me, Deadpool kind of peaked back then. I say all of this because I feel that Deadpool VR has the potential to be the perfect VR game. Because, like I said, this character lends himself so well to video games, and especially that over-the-top nature inside VR where there isn't as many limitations. I think this could have been absolutely amazing, but what it ends up being is a slightly missed opportunity. So we're going to discuss all of that today. Now, if you're new to my channel, you might not know this, but I don't cover many VR games. I only cover VR games if they're doing something very unique and something different, or it's a very big release. Now, to me, what makes a good VR game is having one that feels truly immersive, one that you can interact with, one that has great physics. What comes to mind is something like Boneworks, Half-Life Alyx, Blade and Sorcery. There's not many amazing VR games out there, and honestly this technology is still very much in its infancy, but I feel like it now might have more of a chance to spread its wings because there is now a competitor to Meta, with that of Valve releasing their new headset. So I just thought it would be worth taking a quick look at this game today. So I'm going to try and get into this rapid fire positives and negatives like I always do with my early access reviews, because there's not too much to be said about this and I have only got limited gameplay that I can actually discuss. This is all based on the early access press hands-on gameplay, so bear that in mind, okay? This is an early access review. But Deadpool VR, what it does get right is the combat, okay? The arcadey nature of the combat. It's very much similar to that of Batman VR that came out not long ago, where it knows, the audience that it's trying to capture. It knows that this is over-the-top arcadey combat, and it's not, serious tactical gameplay. It's not going to be like Onward VR or something like that. Now, also at times, it's kind of going for that kind of character action video game trope where, you are trying to score as much as possible. You're trying to reach the highest levels of combos and stylish kills, legendary kills, and all this kind of stuff. So there is, like a combo system in this game where you do try and get the most flashiest kills. So it's kind of character action in that way inside of VR, so it does make it quite interesting and a new genre that I haven't seen many VR games pull off. But the best way I can summarize this is it's kind of almost Borderlands-y combat. Even the art style at times reminds me a lot of Borderlands, but the gunplay feels very much kind of arcadey Borderlands. And there is some nice interaction with the enemies, like chucking your weapons at the enemies, like even picking up a limb and using that as a weapon, grabbing their weapons. But at this point, we have seen all of this done in VR. VR gaming is kind of becoming a one-trick pony with its gameplay, and that is a shame. So what I really like with this game is more the combinations that you pull off, being able to interact with the enemies in different ways, using the physics. Now, the reason I mentioned Borderlands and why this reminds me a lot of Borderlands, it's not just the art style, but it's also the arcadey nature of the shooting and just the feedback of it all and the different enemy types and the shields and all this kind of stuff. And luckily for you, thanks to today's sponsor Xmod, I can help you customize the games that you love like Borderlands to unlock their full potential. Xmod is a platform that unlocks thousands of free cheats, mods and trainers for your favorite single player PC games. Now, I've always felt that games are like a canvas and mods are the paintbrush. They basically allow you to create your own unique experience, and that's why I love modding so much. Now, the main features of Xmod is it supports over 5,000 PC games, from massive AAA games to smaller indie titles. It works well with popular games like The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption 2, Cyberpunk 2077, or Skyrim or Fallout, you name it, it has you covered. With regular updates, it stays compatible with brand new games releasing day one. So, if you're like me and you've been addicted to Borderlands 4 for the last few days, well, perhaps you're looking for some trainers, some mods to up your game, and basically tweak it, because let's be honest, Borderlands 4 does need some tweaking. Why not change the difficulty to one-shot kills? One-shot kills. Well, thanks to Xmod, now you can, because Borderlands 4 is now available. You can select from a list of trainers like infinite health, infinite shield, or as I demonstrated, one-hit kills. But don't be sad, little Jimmy, the fun doesn't stop there, because it doesn't just cover trainers, but also mods. So you can get things like frame generation to boost that FPS, or perhaps you want better weapons, difficulty tweaks. You can find tons of different mods for all of your favorite games on Xmod. So what are you waiting for? Get modding today by using Xmod. Link below in the description. Make sure you go check it out and enjoy the games at their full potential with Xmod. I love the sound design in this game, that's a really big positive, and just the gunplay feels snappy and responsive. Where it fails to me is with its melee combat. The melee combat sucks so much compared to great games like Blade and Sorcery, for example, and obviously this is arcadey, flashy, it's not trying to be, simulating realistic weight or anything. It's kind of like Skyrim VR, where you kind of float your sword around in front of the enemy and it doesn't do jack shit. I mean, it will actually interact with the enemy, but it doesn't feel good. And it's just kind of a way to cheese the enemies, and they just split apart without actual any connectivity, which kind of sucks, to be honest.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Now, the next point I want to make is a slight negative one, but this is kind of more of a subjective take, because it's not going to maybe be like that for everyone, so I can't say it's completely objective, but to me, the character of Deadpool has kind of been lost in this. The voice acting is not amazing. The guy who's playing Deadpool in this just feels like he lacks the quippy nature of Deadpool, and it feels almost like a PG version of Deadpool. It's got the classic, breaking the fourth wall, which I don't really care about or like, to be honest, but that is a Deadpool kind of signature move. But it's missing that grotesque, over-the-top nature of Deadpool, and his lines just kind of fall flat at time, and the jokes just don't really land most of the time. But I think for a younger audience, this is definitely gonna be, good. And for some people who just love Deadpool and haven't had anything Deadpool related in a very long time, you're probably gonna enjoy some of the jokes here, but he is talking non-stop, as you would expect, and when the voice actor doesn't feel truly like Deadpool, that is a bit of a problem. Now, to give you another positive of this Deadpool VR review, I would say is simply the fact that there is replayability here. There are secret things to find in each level, so you can go back, unlock a new area, and it's kind of a mini level within the level itself that you can go, and it's kind of like a combat arena and challenges. You can also find comic books scattered around and all this kind of stuff, so there is collectibles, some replayability, and this is a proper AAA full story game. So, you know, it does change things up. You are always being sent to new, you know, locations. You're unlocking different, you know, abilities and weapons and stuff like that, different guns. And honestly, it doesn't really get boring because you're always, you know, kind of one-upping yourself, you know, with that score system, that character action. You're trying to get the best possible score in each level. Like I said, very arcadey combat, but the shooting for the most part feels good. The interaction side of things, even though it is kind of experimental with some things like, you know, chucking your weapons, like I said, the gravity kind of power that you have, it just feels like lackluster, especially in the world itself. You can't really interact with anything, nothing has much weight, and it is much more of an arcadey shooter, I would say. That's where it's actually the best. But you can play around with different weapons later on, which I do like, but I just wish the melee combat itself felt a hell of a lot better, but sadly it doesn't. But you can usually use some of the weapons from the enemies as well, like the bow and arrow, or just other guns that you find. But just don't expect this to be one of those VR games that feels like, you know, real in the way that you're kind of very immersed in this world. Also, the enemies aren't completely brain dead, which I like for VR games because usually they're pretty stupid. They actually do try and flank you, move around, and you get lots of different enemy variation in this game. And of course, you have to use different tactics to figure out what is best for each enemy type. But it's not exactly difficult. It's more one of those games where you get in that flow state with the combat. But for the most part, I think it does a pretty good job. The whole point of Deadpool is dark satire. It's not supposed to be taken seriously. That's why, you know, I probably don't enjoy it as much as other superhero stuff that I'm just not massively into anyway. But I did like the original Deadpool and the OG Deadpool game. It was very grotesque and, you know, like dumb in a shocking way. And I feel like this new game has lost some of that charm. Even with the gore and stuff like that, it's just not as adult, if you know what I mean. It feels much more Disney branded and a little bit safe, but it's not to say that the gameplay isn't good. I think they've done a pretty good job with the level design, the gameplay, the enemy variation, even if it is missing some of that stuff that makes VR games actually, you know, special. It's kind of doing the same things that we've seen before, but it does have some unique flavor to it, so I would recommend it to Deadpool fans. But for VR people in general who like VR games, you know, you're probably not going to miss much if you skip this, and certainly for people like myself who don't play VR games, this is not worth, you know, getting invested inside of VR gaming for, I would say. So there you go, that is my Deadpool VR review, just a quick early access look, as I thought I would cover it. And finally, I just want to end this video by saying I'm glad that now VR gaming has other competitors. It's not just Meta, Facebook, the Zuckerberg, it's not just getting zucked. I am just very glad that it's now getting a competitor like Valve, you know, and they are much more user-friendly, not so much, you know, corporatism and anti-consumer. They are a little bit more balanced on this kind of consumer culture, I would say, giving you freedom and flexibility, better prices and customization, honestly. So I'm glad that Facebook might finally be getting, you know, or Meta might be finally getting some competition, and I think this is good for VR in general, because if this technology does proceed to become more and more popular, and not just for gaming, but people start interacting with this on a social fundamental level, which I don't think is personally good for humanity, at least then it's not going to be controlled by one mega corporation, and there's going to be a little bit more of a user-friendly platform. So I just think this is a good step for VR, and I just wanted to give you my thoughts on it today. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, my wise ones, and what you think of VR gaming in general. Is it just the gateway to the dystopia, or is it actually a good time? I'm still quite mixed on VR gaming. I do think it is gimmicky, but there are some quality games that really do show you the potential of what VR games can become, but they are lagging behind a lot, and we haven't seen much innovation since the kind of, you know, VR hype began. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction. But Deadpool VR, I do think It's an okay game, but it's nothing groundbreaking, sadly. And I do think that if you are a fan of Deadpool, then the Deadpool VR game will definitely be up your alley. Otherwise, yeah, I would not be rushing out the door to get this. But there you go, my wise ones. I hope you enjoyed this Deadpool VR game review. So I'll be seeing you in the next video. Peace out.